Okay, so this is should be our last session on preaching and teaching. Obviously, there's much more, but I'm hitting some practical ideas or statements on preaching and teaching, practical thoughts. And I'm under the idea of pastoral authority, where some will push that to the limit and think they're a big shot because they're a pastor. Yeah, it is an awesome responsibility, but still just don't take yourself so seriously. Okay, the next statement I have is Baptist popes or control freaks are cultish and insecure. Where they basically say, you shouldn't read this, you shouldn't do that, and they want to control everything. I remember hearing in school by the head pastor, you shouldn't read heretical material. And the thought that immediately came to my mind was, well, how am I going to know if it's heretical if I don't read it? So he's a Baptist pope. Another thing, okay, with this in mind, some might think, well, then you're encouraging people to challenge a pastor. No, this is another thought under this pastoral authority. One should not challenge or belittle a pastor, especially if older. The authority for that one, okay, even if he's an apostate, you're not there to argue with somebody. If the Lord puts you in a situation where you could say something, okay, then say it. But for somebody older, 1 Timothy 5 verse 1, it says, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brethren, the elder women as mothers, the younger as sisters with all purity. I personally, in my own life, is very big on that one, where if I know somebody's older than me, then I won't challenge them. I will appeal to them. The Bible is an Oriental book. Oriental culture really has that ingrained in them, where our culture does not. This is a problem with Facebook or emailing, is that we need to ask the person we're writing to in correspondence their age so that we know how to respond. Okay, so I'm not encouraging a person to challenge or belittle a pastor, especially when they're older. Okay, it's just some practical ideas. Okay, if another thing on people in a church, if the pastor is wrong and the people have no objection, okay, this is like if somebody's a member of a church. If the pastor is wrong, teaching a heresy or whatnot, and the people as a body do not object, then the only choice is to leave quietly. It's just to leave. We've had to experience that in our own personal life. It's not sitting there to argue with them. If a person can't, my wife and I had to do this. It's a very hard thing, but important. So if he's wrong, it's clearly a wrong that you can't overlook, and the people really have no objection to it as a body of people, then a person just should leave. Another thing is on pastoral authority is do not develop a checklist for spirituality. Okay, if this person does this, this, and this, then they're spiritual. If they don't, then they're carnal. This is a common error. In fact, the church we were part of in Colorado, the preacher actually developed the list. And then you had to sign it in order to make him happy. And so that's a checklist of spirituality. In the New Testament, John 3, verse 8, Jesus said that people who are born again are like the wind. So you can't tell. I hear a lot of preachers say, well, if so-and-so is doing this, or if that person does this, or you do that, then you're not saved. We can't say that. We don't know that. Okay, if God calls, say, as a pastor, he calls you to a certain place and you are absolutely certain he's called you there, then stay faithful in spite of the fruit or lack thereof. If it's one person in there, two people, stay faithful in spite of the fruit or what you think is the lack thereof. Still under pastoral authority, a leader rises above pettiness. A leader does not take himself seriously. A wise leader can adapt without compromising. A real leader sacrifices for the people. Another one on this one is, am I going too fast?
A little bit.
Okay. A wise leader adapts without compromising. Under that one is that, okay, a person can preach maybe in a church that's not as doctrinally sound, or maybe even a compromising church, as long as they don't put limitations on you to preach for them. If I was asked to preach in a Lutheran, I'd preach in it. They could run me out, or I could try to give them the gospel, or anything like that. You don't have to now when they want you to compromise, that's when you got to draw the line. This is what Billy Graham did, is he started compromising with these people. So you can adapt without compromising. Do not gain fame or take credit at accomplishments of another. An example of somebody in the Bible that did that was King Saul, 1 Samuel 13, where it says that Jonathan won the battle, and then Saul proclaimed that Saul won the battle. Do not gain fame or take credit at the accomplishments of another. Last one under pastoral authority is be competitive, but don't lose your testimony. So do you have pastoral authority in number 8? Is that what you have? Number 8? Okay. Good. Right on. These are just some practical ideas. Some of them my personal likes or dislikes. Okay, number 9. The length of time of the message should be appropriate. The common rule on that is the mind can only retain what the bottom can sustain. If you have wood pews, you preach shorter. Now, I'd say 35 to 50 minutes is about the general length for a Sunday message. One guy at the school, he was rather dry in his preaching, and he said when he saw 2/3 of the congregation going to sleep, then he would stop his sermon. If people knew that, they'd start sleeping the first 5 minutes. But no, 35 to 50 minutes. I would say if you take Ecclesiastes and read it as a sermon, just read it out, it would probably take about that, 35 to 50 minutes. Now, some men are good. They could go, like Sam Gipp, he can go for over an hour quite often. Me, personally, I don't have that capability. But again, he's only coming in at a short time. He's got his messages very precise. Where a pastor, or if you got a class, man, you got them next week, and then next week, and then next week. Don't give them everything all at once. So if you're a guest speaker someplace, be considerate of the pastor's wishes. Meaning if he says, this is when you quit, then quit according to that time. The attention span of people in this age has really been corrupted and diminished. Okay. Okay, and number 10, the last one is be a confident and disciplined soldier of the word. When I say confident, I mean a good athlete is confident, not so much just completely self-confident. He's confident in his coach, he's confident in the rules, he's confident in that area, but we have no confidence in the flesh, but we're confident in the truth of God, and he's a disciplined soldier of the word. Disciplined in body. If the people can see the pastor from both sides of the pulpit, meaning he's bigger than the pulpit, someone is not disciplined in their body. Disciplined in finances too. Okay, so that's all under public, if I got that. Yeah, a public pattern. Okay, this last one is a private delivery. Private, not delivery, but privately speaking to somebody, private witness, a personal witness. Okay, 2 Timothy 2 is our pattern. Okay, there's a difference between public preaching and personal witness. A person who is street preaching, they would want to be bold as a lion, but when a person walks up to talk to them, they got to shift to be gentle as a lamb. 2 Timothy 2:24. This is the Bible pattern, and the servant of the Lord must not strive, but be gentle unto all men, apt to teach, patient, in meekness, instructing those that oppose themselves, if God peradventure will give them repentance to the acknowledging of the truth. Okay, so that's in our personal witness, one-on-one, one-on-two, in public. This is a Bible method of witnessing to somebody personally. It's not trying to take our sword and hack them to pieces. Okay, yeah, I know, quote, teenage Christians like to do that. Okay, but the Bible pattern here is gentle, apt to teach, patient with that person, in meekness. Okay, meekness is an attitude. Gentleness is the action. Gentleness is one of the elements of the fruit of the Spirit. And I think meekness is 2. Galatians 5. Verse 22. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. So meekness is an attitude and gentleness is the action. And when we're talking to somebody, use humor to relax the person. Be patient with the person. Be patient with their skepticism, with their mockery. Because they're suspicious of you. They've had preconceived ideas. They've been probably wounded by somebody. So that's okay that they're suspicious of us. So in our private delivery, meekness is the attitude, gentleness is the action. Of course, unless the Lord would happen to lead you to give us a rebuke on somebody, that's different. Okay, and to me, the one way of not displaying a, quote, know-it-all attitude is one can state, this is my understanding from my research, and I've concluded after viewing the evidence. Okay, I had a guy in jail ask why he was a witch. So he asked why I believed in Jesus. And I said, because of scientific empirical proof. He said, oh, you got my attention. Okay, it wasn't a blind faith. So you can state to the, okay, if you get into discussion, okay, this is what I understand. After I've researched and I've concluded after viewing the evidence, whatever it is. So that way you're not like a know-it-all to them, and it's not two people yelling at each other. And you're showing them that you're trying to reason with them. Another thing we can do is we ask questions to involve the listener, to get him to think. That's what Jesus did to the woman at the well. Most soul-winning methods are 1, 2, 3, follow this pattern, don't deviate from it, get them to the point, and to get them to pray this prayer, and that's it. Now we want to ask questions to involve the listener and to cause them to think. Another thing we want to do is allow the listener, the person we're witnessing, to state their beliefs and listen to them. Take note of some inconsistencies when they state their beliefs, if there are any, because a heresy is always self-contradictory. And then a person can kindly say, okay, I understand what you're saying. Did I understand correctly? This is what I heard you say. Am I understanding correctly? Yeah, okay. Here's the problem I have. And then state the inconsistency. And then see if they can help you overcome that problem. Okay, an example. I was talking to a Muslim in Australia, a man my age, so we're on the same equal footing. He gave us a compliment about being publicly declaring our faith. So I started chatting with him. And then I asked him about the Muslim faith. I said, I wasn't raised Muslim. I said, can you tell me some things? And he started telling me, and I said, do you call Muhammad a prophet? He said, yes. I said, is a prophet somebody that foretells the future or prophesies? He said, yes. I said, okay, Muhammad the prophet, can you give me any of his prophecies? And he couldn't, because he didn't prophesy. And so I just said, see, that's a problem I have with your faith, is you call him a prophet, yet he didn't prophesy. I said, now Jesus is a prophet, and I can give you a lot of his prophecies. And then he responded by saying, well, if you get the Quran and read it in the original language, the Arabic, read it in the original, then you might understand better. And I said, oh, okay. Have you done that? No. I said, then why should I? So I listened to him, I listened to his things, and we just chat about it. And hopefully he thought about it. And unfortunately, when somebody has a false belief, you got to get them to start doubting that belief. Okay, if a person, it's easier to paint a car that has no paint on it. You just put the primer on, sand it, put the paint on it. But when it's already got paint on it, it's got some rust on it, then you have to take that off first. And when the Spirit leads you, you can pressure them about their hypocrisies, depending on their attitude, and try to bring them to the truth. I believe another thing in personal witness, we want to observe the age of the listener. And if it's somebody older than us, we appeal to them in a different attitude versus somebody who's our equal or below us. And I also believe we do not pressure for them to respond in the affirmative. That's very difficult, especially from what we were taught in soul winning. We always wanted to get them to respond. We always wanted to get them to pray. But in the Bible pattern in Acts 2, Peter just preached a message and then the people responded. And in Acts 16, Paul and Silas had already preached, and they went through their thing, and then the Philippian jailer says, what must I do to be saved? So it's the people that respond of their own will. And then the last thing, when you're talking to an individual, watch their eyes. And you could see from their eyes an enlightenment or a blindness. You can see it by their eyes. I've seen their eyes glass over, and that's a spirit that just stepped in and blinded them. And then I've seen their eyes light up, and that's exciting to see that they understand. And that's part of the personal witness. So that's all I got.